إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is our fifth lesson on the Sharh, the explanation of Nawaqid al-Islam of Shaykh Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah, and we are currently going through the commentary of Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabri hafidhahullah on the first Naqd, and we reached the first ayah that Shaykh Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah cited in mentioning this Nullifier of Islam, and that is the well-known, the famous verse, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Indeed, Allah does not forgive that partners should be set up with Him in worship, but He forgives what is less than that to whomever He wills. The Shaykh mentioned some benefits in relation to that, and so today we are going to go through the next verse mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam. And so our lesson starts here today. The second ayah the Shaykh says is the Ayatul Ma'idah, is the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And we notice that in the ayah, Shaykh al-Islam does not quote all of the ayah. He quotes from the end of the ayah. إِنَّهُ مَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْجَنَّةِ وَمَأْوَاهُ النَّارُ وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. Indeed, the one who associates partners with Allah in worship, then Allah has made paradise unlawful for him, made it haram for him, and his abode will be the hellfire, and the wrongdoers will not have any aiders. And the full verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the Shaykh says that from the habits of the people of knowledge is that sometimes they want to allude to the entire verse, but they mention just part of the verse. But the intent is to allude to the entire verse. And this is something that we see by looking comprehensively at the writings and the statements of the scholars. And in instances where they just want to allude to the entire verse, they limit themselves to mentioning just a portion of the verse. The intent is not just to restrict what they want to say just to that part of the verse, but so that the listener understands that the entire verse is being alluded to, and that if you return back to the entire verse, you will find that there are issues and affairs and benefits that the Shaykh actually intends by alluding to that, to that verse. So this is what the Shaykh explains, and then he says the complete ayah, the full verse, is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ وَقَالَ الْمَسِيحُ يَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ اُعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ رَبِّي وَرَبَّكُمْ. Indeed, have disbelieved those who say, indeed Allah is Al-Masih, the Messiah, the son of Mary. وَقَالَ الْمَسِيحُ, but indeed Al-Masih, the Messiah, said, يَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ, O children of Israel, اُعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ رَبِّي وَرَبَّكُمْ. Worship Allah, who is my Lord and your Lord. And then the rest of the ayah, إِنَّهُ مَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْجَنَّةِ وَمَأْوَاهُ النَّارُ. Indeed, the one who associates partners with Allah, then Allah has made paradise unlawful for him, and his abode is the hellfire. So the point of evidence in this verse that Shaykh al-Islam intends is that anyone who commits major shirk, the one who commits major shirk, and he dies upon that, then paradise has been made unlawful for him, and his abode will be the hawiyah, the fire. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. And the wrongdoers have no helpers, will have no helpers. So the ظالمون in this ayah is the mushrikun, because dhulm is shirk. Dhulm is shirk. And we see in another ayah in the Quran, Inna shirka la dhulmun azim, the statement of Luqman to his son. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. In Surah Luqman, Surah 31. So here, وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ, for the wrongdoers there are no aiders, then this is the mushrikun. Why? Because they wronged themselves. They committed dhulm upon themselves because they responded to shaitan, they responded to Iblis. Iblis called them to invoke others besides Allah, to worship others besides Allah, to be ungrateful for the favors of Allah, and to assign the favors of Allah to other than Him, and to worship them alongside Him or besides Him. And so such people who turned away from Allah in this manner, then they will have no aiders, they will have no supporters on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so this also is a proof in this ayah that intercession, ash-shafa'ah, is only for the people of Tawheed, and it is not for the people of Shirk. So the one who dies upon Shirk and does not make Tawbah, then there will be no intercession for such a person at all. So this is the ayah then, this is the ayah in general, and then the Shaykh mentions that in this ayah there are numerous other points that we can take as well from this ayah, numerous other benefits as well. So the first benefit that the whole ayah contains is, first of all, that Al-Masih ibn Maryam, he will free himself from the Christians, those who call themselves the Christians, in making him into an ilah, in turning him into an ilah, turning him into a deity, one that they worshipped besides Allah. And this is because Allah Azza wa Jal, He clearly said, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. Indeed, certainly have they disbelieved those who say Al-Masih, Jesus, the Messiah, is the Son, is Allah, that the Messiah, son of Mary, is Allah. So Allah attributes disbelief to them clearly in this ayah. So they disbelieved, and everyone from the Muslims, the general folk, the common folk, they know this, that the Nasara are disbelievers on account of this. And they obviously they took Isa ibn Maryam as an ilah, because if you look at, there's numerous reasons for it, but one of the reasons is that from the jahl of the Christians is that when they looked into the Torah, and in the Torah we see there are often words such as the children of God, the Son of God, and God the Father, and this type of language, which to the Bani Israel, it was clearly understood what this speech meant. It meant a righteous person. When it is said that so-and-so are the children of God, it means that they are righteous people, pious people. They observe the law, they observe Allah's commandments, and so therefore they are His children in a like a metaphorical sense to refer to a righteous, pious person. And so you can see this type of language in the Torah, in the writings of the Torah, which are present, which are present. And so what they did when this message came to those people, the Romans and the Greeks and other people, and then they hear this language, the sons of God, or the Son of God, and the children of God, and so on and so forth, they, from their point of view, they're already accustomed to beliefs in deities. Apollo is the son of, all these Greek deities and Roman deities, where one deity is the son of another deity, and so on and so forth. And so they took that language, and from it they developed this idea or this belief in Isa alayhi salam as a son, an actual son of God, who is walking the earth, just like they themselves would see their own gods walking the earth. Gods whom they claimed represented, were manifestations of Allah, manifestations of God to them. So this is from the jahl of the Christians, and every rational person, every aqil from the Muslims, he knows that this is disbelief. This is clear, manifest disbelief that those Nasara that they fell into, and then those who came after them became even worse. Right? The ones, the Roman pagans and the Greek pagans who came afterwards, and they adopted this belief, then everyone knows the disbelief in such a statement. The second point taken from the ayah, in fact, the second point that we take in relation to the ayah is that Shaykh Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah, he alludes to something which enters into the shirk that is mentioned by the verse, and that is al-dhabhu li ghayrillah, to sacrifice to other than Allah, because Shaykh al-Islam said وَمِنْهُ الذَّبْحُ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ, and from it, meaning from that shirk which is alluded to in this ayah and the ayah that is before it, then that is al-dhabhu لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ, which is to sacrifice to other than Allah. And so here, just a linguistic point, because in the Arabic he said وَمِنْهُ الذَّبْحُ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. The min here is what is said in Arabic grammar, at-tab'idiyya. It is tab'idiyya. It is that which refers to a part of a thing. Right? So minhu. The ha refers back to shirk, and the min mean from or a part of. A part of shirk is al-dhabhu li ghayrillah. So a shirk, whenever the word shirk is used, we always understand it to be major shirk. This is the general way that we use the word ashirk. Ashirk, whenever it's used, we always assume that it is referring to the major shirk, when it's left open, when it's unqualified, when it's unrestricted. And here, al-dhabhu li ghayrillah, Shaykh al-Islam alluded to shirk as a whole, major shirk as a whole, by way of this one example, which is al-dhabh li ghayrillah. So by no means is it just restricting just to this. Obviously the Shaykh is being concise and terse and simple and short and brief, and he just alludes to a part of shirk to allude to the whole of shirk. And so he then clarifies and says, كَمَنْ يَذْبَحْ لِلْجِنِّ أَوْ لِلْقَبْرِ, like the one who sacrifices to a jinn or to a qabr, to a person in the grave or in the tomb. So since Shaykh al-Islam mentioned al-dhabh as an example, then Shaykh Ubaid then goes on to explain in detail the issue of sacrificing to other than Allah, its forms, its types, and the rulings upon it. So he says that when we look at al-dhabh in general, it is of two types. There are two types. The first type is what the Shaykh explains as dhabhu aada, dhabhu aadatin, which is the sacrifice of just custom, that which is habitual and customary. And the second type is dhabhu ibadatin, which is the sacrifice of worship. So we have the sacrifice of custom and habit, and the sacrifice of worship. So he explains each one, and he says, as for the first, dhabhul aada, which is the dhabh of the habit and custom, he says in this there is neither any reward nor is there any type of burden. Why? Because this act in and of itself is simply permissible. It does not carry any reward in and of itself, nor does it carry any burden of sin or anything like that. And so because this action is like this, then it is always determined by the niyyah, the intention which is behind it. Right? The intention behind it is what determines whether it is rewarded or not rewarded, or if even a person is sinful by doing it with that particular intention. Right? So the deed itself is mubah, permissible, because it's just a matter of habit and custom. So he says, so once we understand that, then there are only three situations in relation to dhabhul aada, the sacrifice of habit and custom. So the first situation is when a person, he sacrifices an animal and it is purely just to eat, just purely to eat. And this is common, something that we experience and do routinely. We sacrifice meat, or it is sacrificed for us, and it's simply just to eat meat, to eat or to drink soup from the broth which is made from it, and so we eat and we drink from it. All of this has no reward, no burden of sin, because the asl here is simply permissibility. And so anyone who does this deed, there's no niyyah he has inwardly, there's no intention at all, then there's no reward, nor is there any burden. And so in this respect, the Shaykh mentions the ayah, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. He is the one who created for you all that is in the earth. Surah Al-Baqarah 2 verse 29. And he also said, هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. So he is the one who created the earth for you. And so at the end of the ayah he says, وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ وَإِلَيْهِ النُّشُورِ. So eat from his provision, and to him is the resurrection. Surah Al-Mulk, Surah 67, verse number 15. So all of this, no reward, no punishment, something which is done habitually and as a matter of custom. The second situation is when a person, he desires to make his family happy, or he wants to see that they can have meat as well, and he doesn't want them to start looking at other people who are well off and always eating well and drinking well and fed well and so on and so forth and having luxurious. So he wants to honor his family, he wants to enter happiness upon them and make them enjoy. And this is from his niyyah. So when he brings, when he makes a sacrifice or he brings the food, obviously this applies to the person making the sacrifice, then this is a good intention. This is a niyyah hasana. And he will have a reward simply by having this intention. Simply by having this intention. So here we see now that a neutral action, which is al-dhabh, dhabh al-'ada, has now turned into a good deed on account of the niyyah. On account of the niyyah. The third situation is that a person, his intent, that he just wants to be extravagant, and he wants to basically show off and to let the poor people see that he is has nice type of food and expensive type of food, and this kind of attitude. Then all of these are from the evil affairs, and upon him is a burden of sin on account of this. And so the burden of sin here is not on account of the action, but it's on account of the niyyah. It is the niyyah which made it an evil deed, just like in the previous example, it is the niyyah which made it a good deed. Why? Because the deed itself is basically neutral. It is neither rewarded nor punished for it in and of itself. It is simply something which Allah has made permissible. So this is dhabhul 'ada, something done just routinely. As for dhabhul ibadah, then this also divides into three types. As for the first type, it is shar'i. The second is bid'i, that which is innovated. And the third type is shirki, that which entails shirk. So shar'i, bid'i and shirki. And the Shaykh will explain each of those three. So as for the shar'i, that which is legislated and which is a righteous deed, and which if performed for Allah, then it is rewarded, then it is that which a person sacrifices, intending by that nearness to Allah. Al-qurb or at-taqarrub ila Allah. Nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal. So this would be like the sacrifices on the adhiyah, the hadi, on the Eid, sacrifice Eid al-Adha, and likewise honoring the guest. When a person wants to honor, make ikram of the dayf of the guest, and so he sacrifices an animal, and he sacrifices it for the sake of Allah, and he does this either for a blood relative, or he does it to someone who is beloved to him for the sake of Allah, another person who's not a relative but he loves him for the sake of Allah. It can be for a traveler, a wayfarer, someone who's on a journey. So for all of these people, he makes the sacrifice intending to make it for Allah and intending nearness to Allah. He wants nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal by way of that. So this is what is Shar'i. Either the adhiya on Eid al-Adha and those types of sacrifices, or to someone who is a near relative, or to a wayfarer, someone who's on a journey, and the likes of that, then this is what is Shar'i, because these are legislated. The second type is bid'i, and the example of this is what people do by the graves of the righteous. And so what they do is they come to the grave and they make a sacrifice by the grave. They are not sacrificing to the inhabitant of the grave. Right? So remember, this is bid'i. It is not shirki. This is bid'i. So bid'i meaning that it does not reach the level of shirk, but it is done in a way which opposes the sharia. And so these people, they come to the grave and they think that this place has some sort of excellence, has some sort of virtue, and that if they were to sacrifice at this place, it is more likely to be accepted by Allah because this place has some significance or some virtue. And it is better to give charity whilst at this place, or to sacrifice at this place, and the likes of these affairs. So remember here, they are not worshipping other than Allah. This worship is for Allah, but it is done in a manner which entails bid'ah in the religion. And this is a dhabh bid'i, because the person did not intend the person in the grave, but he intended to perform this act of worship in a manner with some specifics which are not found in the Sharia. And also this is a wasila, it is a means, a dhari'ah, a means to shirk itself. Bid'ah is a means towards shirk, and that's why we are forbidden from doing deeds which are not in agreement with the Sharia, with the Sunnah. And so this is bid'i. The third, which is a shirki. Now this is when a person, he performs a sacrifice, and he performs a sacrifice in order to, for example, ward off evil. So a person might enter a new home, or he might enter into a valley, for example, and he fears the harm of the jinn. So what he does is he sacrifices in order to please the jinn as a means of warding off their evil. So that if he sacrificed to them, the jinn will be happy and they will leave off any harm. They will not harm him in himself, in his home, in his family, even in his livestock, in his animals that he has, his sheep, his cows, his camels, or whatever else. Right? So he intends to ward off evil from the jinn. Right? So this is a clear manifestation of shirk. Why? Because he's sacrificed an animal for the sake of other than Allah, to ward for a benefit, to ward off some evil. Similarly, a person might sacrifice at the grave intending the person in the grave. And so here what he wants is that he wants protection. He believes that sacrificing for the wali, that wali now will somehow ward off evil from him or bring some good to him. He will win favor with the wali. And so some harm will be repelled or some benefit will be acquired. And so this is why he's sacrificing now. Right? So this is also a clear instance of shirk. So this dhabh is shirki irrespective of what it is that he's sacrificing. Whether it is, a camel, a cow, a chicken, or even just, a small bird or a mouse, or it doesn't matter what it is. The thing being sacrificed does not matter. What matters is that it is being sacrificed to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. So this then concludes the discussion of the Shaykh on the types of dhabh, the types of sacrifice. We have dhabhu adatin and dhabhu ibadatin, and each of them are three types. Then the Shaykh moves on and he says that to conclude our discussion of shirkul ibadah, the shirk of ibadah, we'll finish by mentioning another four types that enter into shirk. Four major types of shirk. So we mentioned al-dhabh because that was the example given by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah. So the Shaykh will now conclude the rest of the discussion by discussing 4 other types of shirk. So the first of them is shirkud du'a, which is the shirk of calling or invoking upon other than Allah. So, for example, they might invoke an angel, Ya Jibreel, or they might call upon a prophet, as some people say, Ya Muhammad, or they might ask for shafa'ah, Ash-shafa'ah Ya Rasulullah, or Messenger of Allah, grant us shafa'ah. Why is this shirk? This is shirk because a person is asking, remember, shirk is to invoke someone for something which only Allah Azza wa Jal has the power over. So, when you invoke someone, when you call upon someone for rescue and safety, for example, you are in a lake or a river and there's nobody else around, and now you invoke some saint, some person who's living, he's 2,000 miles away on another continent. Sheikh so-and-so, save me, help me. Clearly here, you are doing this action on the basis that you believe that the Shaykh, first of all, can hear you. Secondly, that he has the ability and the power to actually rescue you. On all of these, you are ascribing something of rububiyyah to this person, because the one who hears and sees all things, irrespective of distance, is Allah Azza wa Jal. The one who can save you using the ways and means, by his own intervention to bypass the ways and means, is Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So by making this dua, this invocation in this manner, then you are implying that this person has something of rububiyyah. And it would be a contradiction for you to say, well, I believe only Allah rescues and has the power and has the ability. Now it's a contradiction. If that's what you believe, why don't you invoke him then? It's a contradiction. So likewise here, the reason why I give that example is to lead to this example that the Shaykh gave, which is ash-shafa'ah. If someone asks the Messenger of Allah for shafa'ah, so he goes by the grave and he says, ash-shafa'ah ya Rasulullah. Why is this shirk? It is shirk because ash-shafa'ah likewise is something that only Allah controls and has power over. Right? No prophet, no angel, no righteous person is allowed to make shafa'ah, is able to make shafa'ah, because shafa'ah belongs to Allah and it will only take place on Yawm al-Qiyamah after He has given permission and for the one with whom He is pleased. Right? So this, you should see this in the same way as all of rizq belonging only to Allah. Does not all rizq belong to Allah? So you ask for rizq only from Allah. Does not all izzah is might and honor. فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةِ جَمِيعًا. فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةِ جَمِيعًا. To Allah belongs all of izzah. Likewise, just like all the other things that we believe only belong to Allah. Right? The one who is the source of barakah is Allah. The one who is the possessor of al-izzah, which is might and honor, is Allah. The one who is in control of rizq is Allah. The one who is in control of life and death is Allah. And the one who is in control of shafa'ah is Allah. Likewise, because no one has access to shafa'ah, has control over shafa'ah, has power over shafa'ah, except Allah Azza wa Jal. So treat all these things to be the same. So therefore, when someone comes and he invokes the righteous, invokes the prophets, invokes the angels and says, give me shafa'ah, then this is a clear instance of major shirk. This is shirk fi du'a. And so, this is what is called shirkud da'wah, the shirk of invocation. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He said in the Quran, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. And your Lord has decreed, call upon me and I shall respond to you. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Indeed, those who are too arrogant from my worship, then they will enter into Jahannam. They will enter into Jahannam داخرين, in humiliation. So this ayah that the Shaykh then mentioned as part of the proof for speaking about this issue of ad-du'a and da'wah, he says there are numerous things that this ayah contains. That is Surah Ghafir, Surah 40, verse number 60. Surah 40, verse number 60. The first thing that the ayah contains is that in this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal is directing His servants from His benevolence, from His mercy, from His kindness, from His generosity, is that He's directing them to invoke Him, to call upon Him. And we see this in another ayah. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then indeed I am close. I respond to the one who calls when he calls. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 186. That's the first thing. This is from Allah's mercy, kindness and generosity that He is directing His servants to invoke Him. Secondly, Allah Azza wa Jal has promised a response, because He said, Astajib lakum. And your Lord has decreed, call upon me, I shall respond to you. And we see that in numerous ahadith, it is mentioned that so long as there is no sin involved in the dua, so long as there is not any dua for cutting off ties of kinship, and anything which is unlawful, then Allah will answer the dua so long as it is done with certainty and with sincerity. And so Allah will do one of three things, in fact. And this we know from the texts. Any dua made by a believer which does not involve any sin, then there are three outcomes of that dua. The first outcome is that Allah Azza wa Jal will hasten the thing that you have made dua to Allah for. Allah will hasten that and bring that and answer your dua and bring it to you. The second situation is that the dua will not be answered, dua may not be answered, but in recompense, something of evil is removed from you. Some harm that would otherwise have come to you, that evil has now been, Allah removed it from you. Allah decreed that it not come to you. So obviously your dua was decreed, and the harm being removed was also decreed. So this is an important point, because often people who make dua, and they make dua for a specific thing, and it could be for the removal of an illness, it could be for a child, it could be for whatever is permissible and lawful, and a person doesn't find his dua is not answered. A year passes, 2 years pass, 3 years pass, 5 years pass, 10 years pass, his dua is not answered. And often people neglect or forget the fact that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal, because He is most knowledgeable of the affairs of His servant and what is good for him and beneficial for him, then He will not answer the dua. And in recompense, in response, He will remove from him evil, some evil which may have come to him, that makes up for the dua that he was making for that other thing. And so this person not realizing this, because obviously a person cannot know evil which hasn't come to him, right? So a person cannot appreciate calamities that haven't actually come to you. So this is something very, very easy to forget, that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal has removed countless calamities that would have come your way, but they haven't come your way because you've been making dua for something, and so that dua in itself is ibadah, is worship of Allah. So to reward you for that, some calamities, some evils have been removed from you, which you obviously won't know. But He hasn't given you the thing that you asked for, because perhaps within it there is some, either maybe Allah wants to test your patience, or maybe that thing itself there wouldn't be some good in it, because Allah knows what you do not know. So that's the second outcome of a dua. The third outcome of a dua is that Allah Azza wa Jal will leave the outcome and the reward for the hereafter. So either perhaps that dua might be something which is for the hereafter, or Allah save me from the calamities and the afflictions of Yawm al-Qiyamah. That dua clearly can only be answered, the outcome of it, and it can only be answered on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Or it could be you are asking for something in the life of this world, and Allah will not give it to you, but in the hereafter He will give you something as a reward for that dua, and to make up for that thing that you didn't receive in the life of this world. So Allah is preserving the reward and the benefit and the outcome of that dua for you in the hereafter. So this then allows us to see how to despair of making dua. No person ought to despair from making dua. And anyone who despairs of making dua, then obviously he is ignorant of these realities, of these affairs, of this issue of dua. So these are the three outcomes of a dua. Allah Azza wa Jal has said, Astajib lakum. Astajib lakum. I shall respond to you. And the response to a dua can be in any one of these three ways. Right? Allah will respond to you. He will respond to you. Whether it is by your dua actually being answered immediately or hastened, so you get what you asked for, or by calamities being removed, or evil being repelled from you, or you being shielded from some evil, or in the hereafter your dua will be recompensed and answered. So it's a promise, and Allah never ever breaks His promise. So the Shaykh says, so therefore any dua that you make which is upon ikhlas, your dua will never ever be wasted. And always make that dua being absolutely certain of being answered. Now that you know these three things, you know with yaqeen, with certainty, that if you are sincere and you're not asking for something which is haram, unlawful, your dua will be answered in one of these three ways. So this is the second affair in relation to this ayah, the issue of the shirk al-du'a, and the issue of this ayah as a proof. So the proof then in relation to our topic is that in this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He first of all He called ad-du'a to be ibadah. So reflect upon the verse. He said, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ud'uni astajib lakum. So at the beginning of the ayah He said, and your Lord decreed, make dua to me. He used the word dua. Then at the end, later in the ayah He said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي. He then changed to using the word ibadah. Dua at the beginning, and ibadah to refer to the same thing. The one who is too arrogant from worshipping me, meaning from invoking me. So this is a proof that a dua is in fact ibadah. And that's what we see clearly in an authentic hadith in which the Messenger of Allah he said, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. This hadith we see in al-Musnad of Ahmad and al-Bukhari, in al-Adab al-Mufrad, and others as well, Ibn Majah and others. So in this hadith we clearly see ad-du'a being referred to as ibadah, and the one who does not invoke Allah as one who is mustakbir, the one who is arrogant, the one who Allah Azza wa Jal has invited him from His mercy, kindness, generosity to invoke Him, and He shall respond to him, and despite being told that, he's arrogant and does not make dua to Allah. So this is arrogance. And everybody knows, the Shaykh says, that even just purely from the fitrah, everyone knows that when there is a generous person who invites you to something, this person is a generous person, he's making an invitation for you or to you, and you do not respond to him, this now is a kind of transgression. And it is a type of evil manners, bad manners, su'ul adab, with that person. And so if this is with the person, then who is more generous? Who is more kind and generous than Allah Azza wa Jal? The Shaykh says, even from the disbelievers are those who have enough aql, who have enough intelligence to understand this issue, that there is no one who is more generous and kind than Allah Azza wa Jal. And so therefore, when Allah Azza wa Jal invites you to invoke Him and make dua to Him and promises that He shall respond, then it is upon you to invoke Him alone, do so sincerely, ask only for that which is permissible and lawful, and be certain in your dua. The fourth affair that we take from this ayah is the severe threat سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. They shall sure enter Jahannam. And they will remain there in Dakhirin. Shaykh says, هُوَ الْخُلُودِ فِي النَّارِ. They will enter therein for eternity, al-khulud. Now we see that there are numerous texts as well in the Sunnah which mention the same thing that we find in the ayah, and they mention ad-du'a from the types of ash-shirk al-akbar, and from them is what is reported by al-Bukhari and Muslim from Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man mata wa huwa yad'u min duni Allahi niddan dakhala an-nar." Whoever dies whilst he is invoking or calling upon a rival to Allah, he will enter the hellfire. And Ibn Mas'ud said, and I said, "Man mata wa huwa la yad'u lillahi niddan dakhala al-jannah." And then I said, the one who dies, who does not invoke others besides Allah, then he will enter into paradise. He will enter into paradise. The second type of shirk that the Shaykh mentions, and we'll conclude with this second type, which is shirkul mahabba. Shirkul mahabba. And this type of shirk is also that which expels from the religion. And shirkul mahabba is that a person takes another thing as a beloved thing, a thing which is shown love, the type of love that is due only to Allah. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal, He criticized the Quraysh, the pagans of Quraysh, and the one who's upon their religion. When He sent the Messenger of Allah to them, He said, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. Amongst mankind are those who love, or who take rivals besides Allah, loving them as only Allah should be loved. And so here, Allah Azza wa Jal, He named those things that they take as beloved things, He called them andad, rivals to Allah. Why? Because these people in their hearts was such love, and that love they had led them to other affairs of respect and veneration and worship and, humility in front of their deities. All of that follows on from that love that is present in the hearts. When you love someone to that degree, you find in fact, when you look at these mushrikun, these pagans, like you see many of them, they go to the tomb of a wali with such love. That love that they have in their hearts for the wali is greater than whatever love they have for Allah. And you'll see them when they stand by the grave, they are in such awe and humility and quietness and ease, and they are stood, and all of this that you would never see them in the prayer. You would never have that same state of mind or state of being. These people wouldn't have that when they are stood in front of Allah Azza wa Jal in the prayer. They have greater khushu' by the grave, by the tomb, than they do when they are stood in front of Allah. And so all of this indicates that in their heart is such an attachment on account of the love that's filling their hearts, and that love, that type of love there is a love that, is shirk. It is shirk. And there are other types of love which are different. For example, the types of love which is tabi'i. Person loves his father, person loves his mother, husband loves his wife, wife loves her husband, parents love their children, children love their parents. All of this is a natural type of love that Allah has put within His servants. And likewise, a person might love certain things from the dunya, like food and drink and clothing and apparel, and so long as it does not lead him into haram, then there's nothing wrong with that. All of this is perfectly normal and natural. But the love that we are speaking of is the muhabba, which is the shirkul muhabba, the shirk, which entails actual shirk, which is this manifestation of love. So these people were named by Allah as taking andad, as rivals. Right? So meaning that Allah treated this as actual worship. So a believer, he takes none as, he does not love anyone with this type of love except his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so from this type of worship, from the great types of worship, is muhabba itself. In the details to this, the Shaykh alludes that this has been explained in much more detail, for example, in his explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, and a person can refer back to that. So this is the second type, Shirk al-Muhabba. We'll conclude at this point. We have another two types. We have Shirk al-Ta'a, the Shirk of obedience, that inshallah we'll look at in the next lesson. But with that, we'll conclude our lesson there for today, and inshallah we'll continue next week. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.